It's a great opportunity to be here in front of you. What I intend doing over the next half hour is to I think we have a wonderful stage set by Dr. Reed for some of the points that I'm going to discuss here. What I intend doing is to bring forth some of the triggers, the catalysts that have made us make the move as far as IT infrastructure is concerned. This has happened in good times as well as in challenge times, but somehow the challenge times are the ones which come into maximum focus. Thereafter, we will look at what some of the leading companies have done in innovating for their infrastructure to survive and challenge the challenges, and then take forward into how we have redefined the baselines and bring forth the new normal. So that is my agenda. So let's start with the positive news. The growth curve is back, and it is across sectors. The amount of investment that is being pumped in, whether it is education, or government, or healthcare, manufacturing, auto, telecom, financial services. There are various triggers, there are various pulls and pressures, and there are various opportunities that are driving this investment. But IT infrastructure forms the real foundation based on which a lot of these are going to get enabled. And that puts a lot of responsibility on IT owners, such as us in different forms, to be able to deliver such an infrastructure capable of providing this. But let's stop for a moment and look at what is happening. When you look at the business landscape, there are a whole host of forces, including the complexity, the economic pressures, and the larger macroeconomic conditions, and sometimes you get into a point of no return where the landscape changes permanently. So this demands a lot of newer functionalities, a lot of innovations, and a lot of changes in the way you put your sourcing, you put your organizational infrastructure, and you bring a lot more automation in your IT rather than just look at traditional methods of doing this. So stop for a moment and look at what was the trigger to the recovery that we're now getting out of. There was this subprime crisis, and this led everything into the tailspin. One after the other, all parameters started declining, and it was one free fall. We too weathered the storm. Look at each and every one of these parameters, from a GDP of 9 plus to a GDP of surviving at 7, from an inflation at about 3-4% and controllable to a 14+% inflation. Looking at what are all the other impact that you had, whether it is in falling exports, people getting out of jobs, not having enough opportunities, and somehow we barely survived, but we really came out faster than the rest of the countries. And at this point in time, this is the result from a survey that was conducted in the first half of 2009, where most of the business leaders were asked, do you anticipate a 10% decrease or more in your gross turnover? And surprisingly, out of 194 business leaders, CEOs who were interviewed, 122 of them said yes, which meant a lot of cynicism and a lot of despondency had set in that time period. And what was the criteria? What was the first question that was asked? How are you controlling your costs? Everybody said, yes, I'm controlling costs. But there was only one learning. Extremely challenged environment, credit availability was the biggest problem. But innovation loves this crisis. You've got to make your dollar, your rupee, work twice over. And what were the focus areas to be able to accomplish this objective? The first one is probably the most obvious. Right? Renegotiate prices with existing providers. 54% of the people who were interviewed had done that. But look at the other two. Embrace modern technologies to be able to control your existing operations and bring some order. Second was take up new and modern architecture reforms. Effectively, what was the emphasis? The emphasis on any of these initiatives were only three things. Number one, to have a satisfied customer. Number two, strengthen the supply chain and make it completely streamlined. And number three, how do you maintain lean operations? All of this do not mean anything directly to IT. But what happened? From being in the periphery, from being a tool which can enable you get incremental benefits and better results, IT actually became right at the center of enabling this. IT became the core of making all these three objectives happen. And what I'm going to do is, I'm going to take some 3 or 4 examples of large organizations who have implemented some of the steps in good and bad times, and how they have impacted them, and how they have reached points of no return. This is an MNC automobile manufacturer. They figured out that from 24 production sites in 13 different countries, there were almost 1,000 applications that were running. With the result that your infrastructure became unwieldy. The deployment time was very, very high, and it was extremely expensive. This despite their having outsourced packaging and manual software installations. The application that were there were simply about every single piece of the infrastructure, every single part of the company had different applications running in different countries. They brought about application virtualization, they reduced the application deployment time, saved the compatibility testing, and by the end of this year, the 1,000 applications is going to come down to 400. The next example is Walmart. They started with barcodes. They started IT in the late 50s with their first mainframes. By 80s, they started using barcodes. Late 80s and early 90s, they started having a retail link system. And they brought a lot more of internet usage in the early 90s when it started proliferating in the US. And then they brought about a lot of satellite communication links which enabled multiple retail outlets of theirs to be connected, and they created a data warehouse prototype. Now, as you can see, these are incremental evolutions of their infrastructure. And as you can see, the dotted line there, that was the time in the .com boom and burst and probably the Y2K phenomenon that they were challenged into looking at something different. What they did was to use internet to exchange data with their suppliers. As you can see, this was supply chain integration. They deployed RFID to be able to track them. They experimented with Web 2.0 as well as social networking, and this was meant towards keeping the customer satisfied. And they launched site-to-store service for online customers, both customer satisfaction as well as enable lean operations. And with the next wave, what they did is to bring multi-channel logistics, develop the site-to-store service, and they are building up a robust inventory management system. The vectors that have been driving are once again the same 3 that I talked about earlier. This is about a healthcare company. This is Boston Medical Center. With the number of the patient records, the PACS that has been deployed across most hospitals, the amount of data that was being generated and the capacity that they needed was becoming very, very high. And it was exploding beyond their realms of what they thought they could manage. And there were 6,000 desktop users who had to access all these clinical applications for delivering the patient care. And they just threw their hands up. And at that point, they went about into simplifying, consolidating on their storage information. And $3.2 million was saved. They removed a lot of servers from their infrastructure. With this virtualization, they controlled the launch of the next data center. They saved $120,000 on power per year, and they reduced licensing costs on the desktops because of desktop virtualization. It goes back to what Dr. Reed talked about, a virtual infrastructure, a virtual storage, virtualize pretty much anything. This is an Indian example, Mahindra & Mahindra. In the 90s, they went about establishing IT as one of the first corporate websites to be launched in 1996. Gradually, they started expanding and they started bringing their supply chain also into this. And in the late 90s, when ERP was still relevant, they launched it pretty much ahead of time. And then they started bringing about Mahindra Connect to bring the employees and the organizations together at that time itself. Today, they're launching their SUV in the US, but over time, IT has enabled them to get to where they are. This is an example that all of us know about. Many of us have probably used it also. The single largest B2C site in the country, so much so that within 2 weeks of launch, there had to be a survey done on why the transactions were so high on this particular website. People did not realize. The fact, because IRCTC is the name of the caterer to Indian Railways. Little did they realize that that was being used for tickets. And in the last 2 years, the average usage has shot up. It's almost like 4 tickets every second. And these are some more examples, and this is including some of what we've done for Dell ourselves. Effectively, what you're doing is to manage the mobility, virtualize pretty much anything, optimize your storage infrastructure, bring about IT management in a more automated and manageable form, and finally enable flexibility in terms of access by way of leveraging the cloud. So what you see on the top portion is what Dell has done for ourselves. And what you see in the bottom is similar solutions that we have delivered to our customers. Let me take the example of virtualization. We realized that sometime around 2008, we realized that there were almost about nearly 10,500 applications which were running in a company of about 70,000 employees. That was completely unreal. Gradually, over time, we started looking at how can they be virtualized, how can they be integrated into the mainstream, and how can we bring about a virtualized infrastructure. We removed almost 6,000 servers from our infrastructure. We have indefinitely postponed the need for our next data center. And by the end of this year, the number of applications is going to be down to almost 4,000. That's about the level of achievement that we've done in the last a little over 2 years. And what was finally the message from all these things? The way global changes are happening, they fundamentally change the way we procure, consume, manage, and use IT. The top two blocks that you see in terms of keeping a premium on efficiency, consolidating and virtualizing is a method of usage, is what you demand from your suppliers. But when you look at the bottom, the workforce transformation, the cloud services are what you are expected to deliver to your consumers. How do you utilize Web 2.0? How do you utilize social media? How are you going to provide for fixed mobile handheld users? How are you going to enable the flexibility of usage by leveraging the cloud? All these are examples that I've given, and this particular slide is something that we at Dell are very, very passionate about. 3 trillion is what he talked about as the investment that's happening in IT for current year. Last year, it was the year before last, 2008 was $1.2 trillion was the money spent by enterprises on IT. Last year, when there was so much happening around us and money supply was really tight, we stood up and said, it appears that $200 billion can be put back into the pockets of CIOs such as yourselves to go and innovate. Why did we do that? Because by various studies it got established that nearly 80% of the budget is committed on day one of a fresh financial year. You end up spending this kind of money for just keeping your lights on. With the result that you're left with only 20% to look at the next innovation, to look at the next change in the usage model, to do a pilot project for something that's going to be extremely strategic in a direction that takes you either towards enabling more customer satisfaction or maintaining lean IT operations or integrating the supply chain. Those are your final objectives. To be able to do that, you needed more money. But when 80% of the money is already committed, you have mighty little to do anything. And when the budgets are slashed 20%, you know what suffers. So we said we will stand up. We'll put back $200 million, and we started looking at exactly what are all the areas that we can economize on. We started automating every single part of IT infrastructure management. We started bringing about a lot of automated tools and IT-based services that are able to deliver this capability to our customers. And before doing it for our customers, we first implemented for ourselves, and we believed that it is possible to bring down the expenses from 80% to 50% for keeping the lights on and leave the remaining 50% available. And by the end of this year, we're going to get there. So, suffice to say that at this point, we are really at the cusp of a defining moment in IT history. This, we believe, is the 5th inflection point. Each economic wave, whether it is up or down, has triggered a wave of new responsibility for IT. And this goes back right from the mainframes, to the mini computing, to the client-server era, to the internet era. The internet era, we've seen the boom, we've seen the bust, and we've seen the recovery now. There was explosion of connectivity. There was access of information like never before. We needed to reduce the higher cost of servers, but then it came along with it with a lot of security-related challenges. There was rapidity in terms of increase in the infrastructure, with the result that over the boom period from 2003 or 4 to nearly 2008, we let the infrastructure become a lot fragmented, with the result that we had a huge infrastructure which was unmanageable and not in tune with the times. And during recessionary times, all of us woke up to that reality and said, let's virtualize, let's consolidate, let's see, are we leveraging what we have enough? Why am I saying this? It's because virtualize pretty much anything from a virtual client, on a virtual server, with virtualized data, with pretty much virtualized anything, we are entering into the virtual era. The virtual era is going to be determined by usage of cloud, massive explosion of data, multiple access mechanisms, way number of devices that we've never thought of before. If we went along on an uncontrolled path, we would have probably had almost 12 times the number of devices accessing data centers. We needed 8 times more the number of data centers and 5 times more the power by 2012. That was the magnitude of the problem. Ubiquitous connectivity and information access, pay-as-you-go models, and infrastructure for massive scale-up and well and optimally constructed. So the vectors that are going to drive are looking at the right way of accessing, saving, reusing, deduplicating data, managing the right method in your IT operations, have the right kind of intelligent IT infrastructure, and how are you going to manage your application work. But while you are in pursuit of building such an infrastructure, oftentimes you are left with this question. Should it be integrated or interoperable? Should it be simple or best of breed? So there are various different questions that keep coming up to you, and we may be very quickly led into believing that it is probably an either-or situation. We may probably have to compromise. And compromise always comes with a cost. And this is like a pendulum which keeps swinging from one side to the other. On one side, you've got monolithic, proprietary architectures where once you're committed, you're committed. And when you have to revamp them, you just trash what you have and get to the new ones. There is a price premium. There is probably some level of compromise. On the other, with open industry standard architecture, which enables choice, which is very well virtually integrated, capable and affordable, uncompromised. Clearly, the pendulum swings more towards the open, and open always wins. So at Dell, we believe in the genius of man. We believe each one of these, interoperable and integrated, best of breed and simple, all of it is possible. So our design philosophy is open and capable and affordable. It will be based on open architecture. We will not defend any legacy. By this, it does not mean it will be any less capable. And it will also be affordable and not fixed upon. In the process, we have also evolved along the way. From delivering parts of this entire UV cycle of IT, we are now capable of delivering the whole. A few years back, if somebody was asked what does Dell stand for, what came to your mind was direct model and the best supply chain. But a lot of these are the best kept secrets. We are the number one in virtualization. 3 out of the 5 internet search engines run on Dell. About 140 million users wake up to the internet through Dell in some form or the other. We are number one in PBR customer satisfaction. We are the first IT company to have declared that we will remain carbon neutral. And for us, green is a life cycle. There are 10,000 customers whom we service through our IT software as a service delivery model. And we are the number one in cloud infrastructure. So we are building from our strengths, and we are creating an overall ecosystem which is capable of delivering the solutions for this virtual era. What differentiates this ecosystem is the fact that there is a combined investment on R&D by all the choices of companies that we have brought forth here, and it gets into almost about $18 billion of leveraged R&D and $2 billion plus in joint go-to-market reach to be able to reach out to our customers and deliver the solutions. And make no mistake, Dell is right at the center of sitting there and driving this field. That's all I had. We're around here, and there are going to be more sessions from my colleagues over the next couple of days. I hope you will enjoy them. Thank you very much.